Hi, today I'm talking to Marc. Hi, Marc.
Hello, how are you?
Fine, thank you. And how are you?
Yeah, pretty good, thank you.
And today we continue discussing asynchronous PHP, DriftPHP, and ReactPHP. Our today discussion will be related to the persistence layer. When we talk about asynchronous PHP, we often consider non-blocking I/O, which means data processing. We take it somewhere, process it, and then put it somewhere. All our applications at the end of the day, in most cases, are about data. And the situation in ReactPHP ecosystem from the point of persistence layer, the database layer, looks not so good. As we have previously discussed with Marc, we can't use PDO calls in our ReactPHP application, and thus our choice of database is very limited, right? What options do we have?
Well, yeah, of course you cannot use PDO operations because basically PDO operations are blocking. So it means that if you're working with a simple server and you make a blocking operation, what you will find is that all your connections in that server are going to be blocked until that operations return the response, right? So that takes us to see that we should start working with non-blocking I/O libraries built on top of ReactPHP Event Lab. So at the moment, what we have is that we can use the MySQL library, we can use the Postgres library, and we can use the SQLite library, which they were pretty good, to be honest. But in terms of what people really need in their projects, for example, if you go to Symfony or if you go to, well, I think that only Symfony is working with that at the moment, at least projects that I know properly, you will find that they are actually using the DBAL of Doctrine. And on top of DBAL of Doctrine, they are actually using the Doctrine ORM. So what we have on terms of ReactPHP, can we use a DBAL? Can we use anything built on top of that libraries where you can just change the implementation of your adapter, and instead of changing your domain layer, you can just change the adapter and start using MySQL instead of Postgres? Well, the response actually it's no. You cannot do that. At least there's no libraries that make that work for you that are stable enough. That means that there are a lot of work there, some people maintaining, So it's not a problem itself, but it's something that people actually thinking about implementing ReactPHP in production can really think about it twice. Basically because you are coupling directly to a library, to a database, to an implementation. And this is something that nowadays people is not going to invest anything to make something like that.
And all these libraries are behind the hood just stream-based clients. Yes, what does it mean? That somebody, a maintainer of this library, has written an implementation of protocol of the underlying database, has built stream-based client on top of it, and you as a consumer, if you want to talk to this database, you have to write this raw SQL queries on your own. Yes, you also have to manage these connections, this low-level stuff, right?
Well, this is basically a back to basics on PHP. Like 12, 30, 40, 50 years ago, we just worked with MySQL directly by making MySQL queries, which is not bad for me. I mean, the problem there was not the MySQL queries. It was that the MySQL queries were written directly in the HTML, the same time, HTML and MySQL. That was the problem itself. If you make port and adapters or hexagonal architecture and you place all your queries in your adapters, then it's basically the same. The only difference is going to be that you are 100% linked and 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 how do you say that, and coupled to the implementation. But well, it can be not a problem, but actually it's a problem for anyone. It's for everyone. I mean, no one wants to couple to the final implementation of the adapter of the MySQL or whatever. It's a problem, not itself, but people don't want to do that. So yeah, if you want to use MySQL, you have to make usage of that library, and you will have to write MySQL queries. Yeah.
And what are the choices? We have MySQL, Postgres, SQLite,
and SQLite. That's it.
We have Mongo, yes, but it was updated 6 years ago.
Yeah,
I think it's dead.
Jeremy Mikola is the owner of the package, but has no updates since 6 years ago, which can be suspicious. Not because the library is good or bad, which I don't know. I'm sure that it's going to be good because I know Jeremy Mikola and it's a good developer. But ReactPHP have been updated for the last 6 years for sure. So maybe the library is not updated. So we're going to take a look about that. Yeah.
And as you said, it is a real pain for asynchronous PHP community, because for me it will be a bit scary to couple, my enterprise project and to depend on the library maintained actually by one guy. What if one day the library becomes abandoned, like MongoDB, for example? I will go to my boss and say, we have used this library, but it is no longer maintained, and now we have to rewrite the whole application. I will look like an idiot.
It can happen to you in almost every project in the world. So this is why hexagonal architecture in that cases are good, because you're not coupling nor to the adapter itself, but to the library itself. You're not coupled to that library. So if in the future there is another library that makes the same but mostly improved and more supported, you can easily change that adapter. Not the adapter of any kind of DBAL, but your adapter of your port, your implementation of the interface. So in that case, it's going to be much easier for you to make that change. To be honest, this is a choice that we should do right now. I mean, it is worth it to start implementing things on top of ReactPHP in terms of performance, but understanding that ReactPHP community is not as good as Doctrine communities nowadays. You have to make that choice, and this is not bad. I mean, I'm sure that for me, implementing MySQL directly, it's not a bad choice, because I really know properly how to make it without coupling to the library itself. But it's not about the library. It's about the community. It's about the environment. Is this environment going to grow during the next years? I'm sure it will. So we don't have to really worry about, okay, this library it's not going to be maintained anymore. Well, this is not going to happen. Basically because there are a lot of people that are actually working with that kind of problems. So if they join all together, I'm sure that they will find a way to keep maintained the library. Myself, I started, for example, some years ago to start a project, a bundle for Symfony for German integration. I'm not using German anymore. I'm not using German since 5 or 6 years ago, but the bundle is still maintained, not by me, but by another guy. So this is how open source works. So we don't have to be worried at all on that situations. Of course, from the other side, we need, and when I say we, I mean you and me and Christian and Michael and all the people that is involved in that community somehow. We need to be sure that more and more people get involved on that libraries. And I'm sure that sometimes someone is going to be interested in ReactPHP plus SQL Server for Windows, and it's going to be interested and it's going to implement something on top of that. And that's it. That's how open source works.
And even if the library is well maintained, it is still a stream-based client. Yes, so no ORM here, no query builder, just plain queries. And of course, for some people it is okay. They don't need ORM, they use CQRS, they separate writes and reads and use raw queries. But I think it's actually the smallest part, yes, of developers. The majority will ask, what? I don't have ORM, no query builder, or no, I'm not gonna use it. Yes?
But you know, it's okay. We have to start with that minority of community. We have to start with them, and all the other part of the community. I mean, we don't have to really care about that right now. We don't have to care in terms of, you know, we care about you. We want you to join us, but at the moment we are not able to start with your demands. Of course, we are not going to be able to do an ORM today, basically because we don't even have a DBAL today. And without a DBAL, without any kind of query builder, we're not going to be able to do that, something bigger than a DBAL. So if someone is expecting an ORM on top of ReactPHP, they have to understand that nowadays it's not a good moment for that. So they are going to have to wait, or start from the beginning. You know, start from the small client, start looking for someone that wants to build a DBAL on top of that, help with the DBAL implementation, and as soon as the DBAL is stable enough, helping building an ORM. Again, this is how open source communities work. People want everything done from the second zero, and this is not how it works. No one is going to implement from the scratch an ORM in exchange of nothing. You know, people the world that doesn't. This is not how world works. But from the beginning, I mean, understanding that this is a long road, well, we can do pretty good things on that with that decisions, yeah.
And from your personal point of view, do you think we actually need ORM in ReactPHP? Because these asynchronous applications, they of course differ from our traditional applications, and if you need this performance, maybe it's your way. Maybe you should go with raw SQL queries.
When you say we, who is we? I mean,
people who write, yes.
The people, we have a lot of, you know, the concept people is much more bigger that we understand. If you ask me if I need an ORM, I don't need an ORM right now. I mean, for me, the ORM work, it's properly placed in the adapter. This is where an ORM work, you can do the ORM work without having a big ORM like Doctrine as a dependency. But you know, maybe the 70% of people really need an ORM, and this should never be under discussion. I mean, people want an ORM, so that's a fact. So if we want as a community to reach that 70% at the end, I'm not talking about tomorrow, but I'm talking about next year, then we need to think about maybe the ReactPHP community needs an ORM. And that's it. That's a fact. That is something that anyone should be able to discuss about. That's a fact. So if you want to go as a strategy to that point, we need to work on that direction. Otherwise, people is going to say, okay, I need an ORM. ReactPHP doesn't have an ORM, so ReactPHP is not for me. I mean, this is so simple. And to be honest, I do not need an ORM, but I think that ORM for a specific kind of projects that are big, the domain is not that important. I think that ORM is good. It's not bad. When performance is not that important, but you want to work with ReactPHP not because of performance, but for stuff related to concurrency and to blocking, then ReactPHP is good for you as well. You don't have to be a maniac around performance to work with ReactPHP. Concurrency is a good thing as well, and it can just ReactPHP can serve slow queries, but in a non-concurrent way.
Mm-hmm. And what about DriftPHP? If I want to use database, is it possible now? And if yes, what databases does DriftPHP support at the moment?
Well, because DriftPHP is built on top of Symfony framework somehow, you can use bundles in the natural way that Symfony people can already use in their projects. So you can find a MySQL and Postgres and SQLite bundles for that. So you can configure the clients through a configuration, simple configuration, and that's it. And you can auto-wire, for example, your clients, and that's implemented and that's public, and you can use that. But well, the question is, what's next? We have implemented all the bundles around all the clients that we already know for ReactPHP. DriftPHP is not going to be focused on implementing new clients for other technologies, because I think that this is not the work for a framework from my point of view. I mean, this is not the work from that DriftPHP should take care of. But taking all components around all the community and put all them together to work as a framework. Okay, so today you can work directly with specific clients. So you will have to work directly with MySQL or Postgres. So what's next? That's another thing. It's going to be a DBAL. It's going to be something where you can directly work with your database, no matter what's the adapter you are using. Well, I don't know, maybe.
Mm-hmm. And the next pain working with a database is connection issues, yes?
Yeah.
We have the connection and several queries, and what if the connection is broken? In a traditional application, we have request, the application starts, we send a response, and the application dies. But when we have a concurrent server, we have several queries, and what happens if the connection is broken? What should we do? How we should handle that? No ideas.
I'm not sure. You have that problem both on your persistence layer, but at the same time on your query queue layer. If you want to work with RabbitMQ, if you want to work with ZeroMQ, if you want to work with any kind of connection that is going with a queue itself, you will find that what happens if connection breaks. I mean, I just say the request response paradigm on top of natural PHP. After the last response dies, everything dies. So the connection is going to be connected again and again and again and again and again. You can have a pool of connections, but nothing happens if the connection breaks. The next connection is going to be connected. That's it. In that case, it's not going to work as expected. At the moment, I'm sure that it's not pretty resolved as it should be. Basically, because a client live, when you connect a client, and in the next, for example, 1,000 connections, you will have that the same client is handling the 1,000 connections at the same time, 1,000 operations. So if that client breaks, it's not that easy. It's not as simple as just create another one. What happens to the lost 1,000 connections that were using that client? Well, that's a problem. You need to take all that connections, all that operations, and place them on the new client. I'm not sure if I'm explaining myself properly.
Yes, I understand. So we should try again. We should reconnect and try again.
Well, why not? Yeah. I mean, if client breaks, it's not going to break only the client. It's going to break the client with the 1,000 operations that are not resolved yet. So if you want to reconnect, what you cannot do is just forget about all that operations. You should take all that operations, apply them at the same time on the new client, and try again.
And where it should be solved, you know, in database layer?
Well, I'm not sure about that. I think that it is a complex problem that as soon as it's solved properly, I think that the ReactPHP environment is going to improve so much, because this is, on terms of infrastructure, this is one of the biggest problems we have today, to be honest. This is a problem that in PHP, regular PHP, is already solved, but we haven't solved it yet in ReactPHP. Well, maybe we're talking about that, and yesterday someone just solved it. I'm not sure, but I think it's going to be solved for the next months for sure. I mean,
and from from your own experience, how you handle such situation? What you can do? You can try to reconnect. You can just crash the server, the application, and via some external tools restart it. Well, what else?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure that the entire server should be crashed because of a Redis connection crash. People have to think that in ReactPHP, when you have a server, a lot of connections are going to be connected there. Not only web sockets, not only web connections, but as well, for example, workers or tons of things at the same point. This is why it's not blocking, because you can have multiple users connected at the same time in the same endpoint. So if you want to crash the entire server because of the MySQL connection, then you will have a mess, because a lot of people is going to just have white screen. And this is not good in terms of using your user experience. So we should be able to reconnect it in a transparent way. Just reconnect it. Of course, if you try to reconnect 3 times and after 3 times it's quite impossible, then server should be crashed, but not at the first time, because the pain is so high of crashing a server when you can have thousands and thousands and thousands of WebSockets. One WebSocket and thousands of connections there.
And why should we? Of course, we should reconnect, but why should we retry the queries? We can listen. We have a promise, and once the connection is broken, we reject the promise. We return, 500 response, and that's it. Let the client redo the query, no?
Yeah, but it is some kind of lazy stuff, right? If you're a client and a user has asked you to get some value in Redis, and my connection, me as a client, the connection just breaks, shouldn't be my responsibility to try to reconnect it and ask for the value again. I mean, because it's not blocking, it's not going to be a problem for the other users, because that specific user is going to last a little bit because of that crash. But some operations that don't really need Redis are not going to be affected at all. So if it's my responsibility and someone has asked me something, I need to be sure that unless there's no way of taking that value for the user, I should be responsible for trying it again, and as soon as I can take the value and respond the value on the promise. That's it. I think that it's going to depend on the strategy of the implementation. I think that both strategies can really work pretty good. Retries, something kind of retries.
It also depends on the domain, yes? For some domain it is okay to reject.
Absolutely. Absolutely, yeah.
So let's make a conclusion, right? We have some challenges, yes, in ReactPHP database persistence layer. We are limited with implementations. We have almost 3 clients. They are very low level. They are stream-based clients we have no ORM, we have no DBAL, and we don't know how to handle connection issues. Yeah.
Yeah.
These are the challenges to be solved.
Yeah. Yeah. To be honest, this is for me, on terms of React PHP, these are the highest challenges for this year. And from the perspective of DriftPHP, we will have some work done for the conference next March. I think that we will be able to show something on that direction that is going to be so interesting, because challenges have to be solved. Otherwise, are not challenges, are just dreams. So for us, it's challenging. Without all that work done, React PHP will not be able to make a big step forward.
Do you see any improvements right now in this direction? Or at least we try to make people aware of this problem at this moment.
So, sorry.
Do you see any improvements? So people try to do something, or...
I'm not really sure about that. I'm not really sure about that. I think that people is more involved in it's my perception. I think that a lot of people is really interested in how React PHP work in the lowest level, in the lowest layer, which is great because it's the basics. It's like there are a lot of people that is actually working on how PHP works. Okay, thank you. This is so important. It's like a pyramid, the lowest layer, that is the smallest layer. It's like an inverse pyramid. The lowest layer is the most important one. So without the work done with the smallest layer on top of, in the bottom of the pyramid, the next layer will not have enough material to work with the next layer. So we have people working on that small layer that it's called basically the core of React PHP. And the results are really amazing. I mean, really good libraries that work as expected. So that's perfect. For me, I think that we really need an environment on top of that libraries, working on a framework, working on database abstractions, working on, for example, in integrations for Logger. Symfony has, for example, Symfony has that bottom bar in the web development when you just debug bar. We should have something like that, for example, in Drift, not in other projects. I think that framework integration that's going to be, it's going to determine if the project itself takes that step forward or not. Of course, a lot of people is going to be very happy to working directly with the libraries, but maybe this is only the 1% of the community. What about the next 10% who wants to work without, DBAL, without ORM? Okay, I think that at the moment we are reaching all that 10%. In 2 years, I think that we will be able to reach the other 80%. But maybe not the other 80, but the other 50%. And having the 70% of the community interested in React PHP and having all the tools needed to work as they expect to. I think this is going to be amazing. But we really need that steps. And I'm not seeing that many people are making that steps, are working on that direction. I'm not really sure. Well, it's going to be about time, to be honest.
A lot of challenges to be solved, yes.
Yeah, and a lot of time to be invested in something that you don't really know that it's going to be the next big thing in PHP. I really think that it's going to be, but I know people thought that mostly different.
And if you are watching this video, if you are interested in React PHP, if you want to make this high level abstractions, contact us on Twitter.
Yeah.
Let's solve these challenges.
Yeah, the conference, one of the main goals of the conference next March, the conference is not about ReactPHP. It's about asynchronous programming in PHP. It's Loop.run. We can make a small description in the video. But a big part of the conference is going to go around ReactPHP. As a community, I think that is maybe it's not the biggest, but it's the community that is just making
the
more
most
different.
active.
Yeah, and the more the community that is actually using more channels for spreading the word about the project. So I think that the conference is going to be a good point of joining to each other, talking about what to do next. Communication across the community is very important to make a good project, good libraries, good frameworks. Without any contact, I think it's quite difficult. Internet is good, but it's not that good. So I think that the conference is going to be a good starting point. And from there, I think that the next year is going to be crazy because we will know each other. We will know how to work with each other. And the more we are, the better we will do on that project.
Very interesting time we live in. Yes.
Yeah.
So
are you sure? Depending on where you live in.
okay.
Yeah.
So thank you for an interview. As always, it was interesting.
Thank you to you. As always, it was very interesting. I agree.
Yes. Goodbye.
Thank you very much. Bye bye.